evening, everyone, and welcome to the program that we have for CTAR Florida. This evening, we are joined by a very special guest who is going to address the topic of gender diversity and how it is not a phase. We are CTAR Florida, which stands for the Society for Intercultural Education, Training, and Research. We fall under the umbrella of CTAR USA, and we are joined by organizations across the world, such as CTAR France, CTAR Brazil, CTAR Japan, you name it, there's probably a CTAR in a country near you. This evening, we are featuring our friend and colleague, Denise Walls, who is going to share her story. And Denise, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. When Rachel and I talked about Pride Month and, what would be a good way to celebrate Pride Month and to shine a light or focus on something that folks are probably pretty curious about, we thought gender identity and the transgender community. And so the presentation today, we're calling it Gender Identity, It's Not a Phase. And as I continue to go through the presentation, you'll see why that is what we decided to call this, because I think that as you are a youth and you come out and you understand and know that you're transgender, it is one of the most popular things that people say to you is, it's a phase, you're trying to fit in. So we'll get into that a little bit further. So hold on, okay. So let me talk to you a little bit about who I am. Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is myself and my son, Callum. My name is Denise Walls. My pronouns are she, they. And I'll talk a little bit about who I am, and I'll talk a little bit about who I am not. So I am the proud mother of a beautiful transgender son whose name is Callum. He will turn 17 on July 12th. He is an actor. He is an entrepreneur. He runs his own Etsy shop. He is an amazing student, and he is somebody who is a very strong ally. So Callum and I have really gone through this journey together. And it started when he was around 11. And so one of the things that I really found was the most meaningful thing to say to Callum is, this is your journey. I don't know where you're going, but I know I will love you through it. So who I am not is I am somebody with virtually zero medical or psychological training. I am a human who absolutely makes mistakes, and I make them time and time again. I am a person and a mom, and that's who I'm really coming to you today as a mom. I'm somebody who's had a pretty big career most of my life. And, that person I have shelved for today, and I'm really just, my goals for 2021 are to mentor vulnerability and to allow space for empathy. So that's who I am today, is a mom. And so I think one of the things that is the most important in regards to who I believe I am is I'm a huge believer in a parent's power and the power of their pride and acceptance and love of their children, and how that ripples into every aspect of their children's life. And so as I continue to move on here, we'll see some of that come to life. But I thought it would be good if we just started with some basic terms. And again,
hey, Denise,
yeah.
Would you mind sharing your screen?
Oh, are you friggin' kidding me? That's hilarious. Sorry. Okay, sorry guys. Let me just do that super fast. It's gonna make this way more engaging. Okay, here we go. Share my screen.
You're a rock star. You got this.
I do. Okay, so this is, wait. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, here we go. Let me know if you can see.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So there's a picture of Callum and I, and that's what I was talking about. So I was just getting to vocabulary. There we go. So we felt like it would be good to just start with some really basic, uh, some basic vocabulary, gender binary, and that is looking at gender in two very distinct sexes. It's all about just man or woman, male or female. Trans or transgender is the umbrella term that it describes somebody who is not the same sex as they were physically born. Cisgender is somebody who's not transgender. Genderqueer is people that don't identify within any gender binary, right? So they sort of have a much more of a fluid gender fluidity. Transition is really about somebody moving into the process that a trans person takes to move into the gender of their core so that they can be who they are. So then there's AFAB and AMAB. So this is something that you'll hear folks talk about. Like my son identifies as an AFAB transgender male whose pronouns are he and they. And so basically it's assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth. And so it's about really, just sort of crystallizing where they started from, and that, based upon this description of itself, it's something that doesn't belong to them. And there's a huge level of dysphoria in a lot of these folks. So the gender binary is, again, just all about like looking at two classes, two category of male and female. And, there's gender, there's anatomy, and, all of these things, there's no possibility for those. And then non-binary is a preferred umbrella term for all genders that other than female, woman, girl, or male, man, boy, used as an adjective. So I don't know, Corey, if there's anything that you feel like would be beneficial to continue to add to this, or if you feel like that's a good sort of baseline for where we're at.
I think that's fantastic. It really is a simple, as simple as you can get to it description for.
Yeah. Right. Okay, great. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the power of personal pronouns. So misgender. So, it's a verb, and it's basically referring to someone especially hardest hit are the transgender population by using a word, specifically a pronoun or form to address them in a way that does not reflect the gender in which they identify. So it was funny because when Rachel and I were talking, when Callum came out to me as trans, and it's been now almost 3 years. It's hard. You have a child and they're assigned female at birth, and that's not who they are. And so suddenly you get to a point where they've come out and you need to and want to respect their personal pronouns. Well, for me, it's still tough. Even 3 years later, I will accidentally slip in a she. Mainly, and we've sort of found the areas in which it happens the most, like when we're with old friends and talking about Callum when he was a baby, when I'm at a doctor's appointment. So anyways, what I have done in my family and in our group is that, misgendering, especially very specifically a trans person, is something that is extremely painful to them. It is a complete, all I can equate it to is if, somebody came up to you and said, "Hello, sir. What is it? What would you like? Do you want a beer with your steak?" You are not, I'm assuming that you do not identify as a man. And so to have somebody come up and talk to you in vocabulary that just doesn't even match you is very, very traumatic for them. So what I do is if I misgender him, I immediately send him $20. Because that there's going to be, it's just a soul-sucking opportunity. You can just see the deflation in his eyes. And so it is the tiniest little thing that allows him to understand that I mean well, and I have a penalty. It demonstrates. So one of the things that I did not put on here is dead name. And so basically trans kids, youth very specifically, and actually anybody that trans, they were assigned female, like for Callum, he was assigned female at birth and we gave him a name. That name is no longer his name. He has chosen the name Callum Ember Walls. And so I cannot and should not ever call him his dead name. And I know it sounds dramatic and like hurtful, like, oh my God, like, you know, he took your name that you gave him and just crushed it up and said it was dead. But, you know, it doesn't matter to me. I really don't care. And what's really important is demonstrating or saying somebody's name, their dead name, in front of anybody is outing them. And that is a complete like no-go. Right. So that's something that you don't do. But misgendering is something that you take very seriously. And if I dead name Callum, which hasn't happened in a year, I give him $100. The end, you know, because I want there to be, you can't just continue to apologize. You got to make it right. So we're going to start talking a little bit more about some of the incorrect terms, like some things that people are using, but they don't really sync up at all with what is correct for the transgender community. So this idea that it's transgendered, it's transgender. It's an adjectives, only adjectives that are derived from nouns or verbs end in ed, right? So this is not, it is you are transgender, not transgender. Again, as a verb, transgender. Some people use it as like transition. The right way to say it would be you transition. So again, same thing as above. A transgender. You know, it's a transgender person or people. It's not an adjective. It's an adjective, it's not a verb. Intersexed. Again, it's intersex. Transgender is not a noun. So again, no ed. Sex change. It's not about surgery only changes body parts, not sex or gender. So again, it's more about gender.
Denise, can I ask you a question about
does anybody have a question?
Yeah, actually we have a question in the chat. Sure. So if we're not sure which pronoun to use, could we use they, or do we use they if we're not sure if it's a he, she? Like, what is the procedure? How do we approach that?
Yeah, so what I would recommend, and it's somewhat common on the West Coast in Seattle, Washington, where I live. One of the first things I do when I introduce myself, hi, my name is Denise Walls. I'm she, they. What are your pronouns? What are your personal pronouns? Some people call them preferred pronouns. That's not right either. It's not like they prefer them. That's who they are. That is their personal pronoun, right? So preferred pronoun would insinuate that there's a choice, a preference. So that's not it. So, you know, again, one of the things that Callum and I are both working on together is we are sitting on the board of Seattle Children's Hospital. They have an advisory board that's dealing directly with personal pronouns and integrating them into hospital as a high priority medical healing situation. Like your personal pronouns being honored are as important as making sure that you get the right medicine, especially at that age and with children. So any other questions?
Yeah, one more question. So if we're thinking in terms of binary, how can you help someone who thinks in terms of male, female, binary, of they? Like how do you convert that in our minds?
I love that you asked that, because again, a lot of people, I actually during the month of June came out as a they. So I changed my personal pronouns to she, they. And there's a couple of reasons why. So for me, it's really about how you identify yourself. So for me, I have always been, I mean, like, everybody has always been, God, you're like one of the dudes. Like you're not, you know, you're so not a chick, you know, and I've done a lot of work in business. And so I'm really in touch with and have a lot of respect and value in my masculinity. But I am definitely a she. Like I know I am a woman. And so for me, when I say she, that means I know I'm a woman, but when I say they, it's also honoring that male energy that I feel like has been a very fundamental core of how I have been successful in life and who I am. You know, I was just never, I mean, I never wore dresses. I never played with dolls, but I know deep inside that I'm a woman. Um, so they is sort of that kind of like you're honoring both. Perfect example is my son, Callum, is a he, they. Callum will wear the most fabulous skirts and heels and, you know, so for him, he's saying he knows he's a man, he's a he, but he also is very in touch with his feminine side and loves clothes and is a fashionista. And so, you know, he will very much wear dresses. And that's where the misgendering comes in, right? Because you see Callum, who's this beautiful man, but is dressed in skirts, you know, and so people just assume that he is a woman when he is not. He is truly a trans male. Does that help explain anything? I mean, are there any other questions around they? Corey, you're a they, them. I mean, those are your personal pronouns. Do you want to say a little bit more about what that means to you, if I kind of nailed that, or should we add some stuff on that?
I am a they, them. You know, it's so interesting because I definitely agree with you 100%. And something that I also recently learned, I always think a best practice when it comes to not feeling quite sure about someone's personal pronouns is not only asking, but like you said, offering yours and then saying a statement like, would you feel comfortable sharing yours, or something along the lines. That way you're not outing someone,
Right.
but you're still giving them the opportunity to share those pronouns with you. That's something that I recently learned, and it was like an eye opener for me, because not everyone is quite as comfortable as I am with my identity. But for coming to like terms with like helping someone understand they, them pronouns, I feel like you're either going to find your own connection or not. But at the same time, you know, gender is so personal to every single person. You know, talking about your experiences where, you know, you grew up and were raised in a feminine manner, but you felt like one of the boys. You felt like some of that. There's a lot of women out there that feel that connection, but they still identify as women. They still, you know, they identify as tomboys or butch, or they identify as different things, but they are still women. You know, having those connections to gender are so individual and personal that I always, you know, say, you know, you don't have to necessarily understand anyone else's other journey, but you do need to respect it, you know? And by looking inwards at yourself, I feel like you're able to find connections to other people. So.
Oh my God, Fred, that's so perfectly said. That was so perfectly said. Thank you so much for letting me just put you on the spot. I think that's exactly it. And, you know, and part of why I have also come out as a she, they is that I am high up in my work life. And I just feel like it's so important. If you want something to become social norm, you have to emulate it. And people have to see it. And so when on my LinkedIn, when one of the first things you see, which I put right next to my name, is she, they, you know, I'm working to create that social norming of people feeling comfortable in you know, presenting their gender fluidity and presenting that gender is definitely you know, it's not just two things. So
yeah,
one
I
other
agree.
thing, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, another comment that I wanted to bring out from the chat is that we all have masculine and feminine energy in us. So thank you for that, Yuko. That's so true.
True. So, you know, I think one of the questions, which is understandable, is like, were you afraid? Like all of a sudden your kid comes out and he's trans. Like, what does this mean to you? And yeah, I was afraid because the figures aren't good for trans people at all. I mean, the statistics are very sobering. So 68% of homeless LGBTQ youth are rejected by family. So like literally the number of kids in Seattle, Washington that are on the street that are LGBTQ right now in Seattle, Washington, over 60% of kids under the age of 17 were kicked out of their home because their parents did not believe and they were shunned. I mean, that's terrifying to me. You know, 54% of those folks actually experience abuse from their family. 40% homeless youth are LGBTQ. And 33% of the transgender people that seek shelters are actually turned away because they don't know where to put them. Do they go in a male? Do they go in a female? I mean, I can't even imagine how demoralizing that is, that you're homeless, and now you're trying to find somewhere, and it's like, we don't really know where to put you. The suicide statistics are terrifying. You can see them there, and especially with the transgender and non-binary youth. So you can look at the average ages. I think that that's really fascinating. 14.4 is the average age that LGBTQ plus youth becomes homeless in New York City. And 13.5, 13 and a half is when they become homeless in New York. Think about what you were doing when you're 13 and a half. You know, I mean, not much. So anyways, okay, so I'm trying to, it looks like some of this, there we go. Okay, so this is sliding in. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the do's. And the things that I've realized have been very valuable as Callum has come out as transgender and as we've navigated this journey. The first thing is, it is not about me. And anytime I try to make this about me, it is an epic fail as a mom, as a person, as an ally. You know, so I know that there were times where Callum was softballing situations over to me, like about this. Like, you know, he's an actor. He's in New York. He called me. He's like, hey, new program's coming out for the play. You know, he's in it. He was a lead. He said, I'm thinking about using they, them as my personal pronouns for the program. I just was like, oh my God. My family is from South Louisiana. Like, they're going to go to that play. They're going to see that. I'm going to have to explain that to them. I don't even know what it means. You know, or so anytime that you're thinking about how it's going to affect you or your family, it's a non-starter. You just got to get over that. And you got to make sure that the moment that this becomes a reality in your life, you turn everything towards your kid. Because in so many ways, like I remember when this first started and Callum was having, you know, there are a lot of medical conditions and, you know, mental health things that go along with being trans. And I remember there was a period of time where I was just like, I got to keep him alive. Like, I got to make sure that he understands that it's important and that we love him. So not about you. Thank them for telling you. It's a big deal, right? It was a big deal for Callum. Callum was out to some of his friends for a year before he actually came out to me. Tell them that you believe them and you love them. And this is something we're going to talk a little bit about as we move a little further down. But so much of being trans is proving it to people. It's just wild. And I didn't realize it until we started to sort of go down that road. And then ask them what support they need to feel healthy, mental, physical, emotional. And then finally get support for yourself. It took me way too long to do that. But part of why it took me so long is that I just, you know, instead of reaching out, I didn't want to talk to a lot of people in my inner circle about it, because when you start talking to people about it, you're inviting them for feedback. And for me, this was something that I had to figure out from my heart and soul. All of this had to come from me. No one knew my kid better. No one knew our situation better. I don't want anybody telling me how to do it or what to do, and trust me, they will anyways. But so some of the don'ts, and there's Callum again. And I love to put pictures of Callum because Callum is, I mean, it's so nice to look at somebody and say, it's not just like, this is somebody's son. This is somebody who's loved, beloved to somebody. So don'ts, and this is where we get back to sort of, don't tell them this is just a phase. And I did that. I'm like, you know, even when Callum was like 10 or 11 and was going to a therapist, You know, he told the therapist that he thought he was transgender, and the therapist is like, oh, no, you're not. You just think you are. You know, you just think it. You just think you are. It's a phase. You know, all of these kids are coming out. You just want to fit, you know, don't worry about it. And so, no, do not ignore it or hope it goes away. You know, when those conversations come up, if there's an opening where you can start discussing this, build on it, create a safe place, ask questions later. And on the flip side, don't be like, oh, I knew it all along. You know, oh, I just knew it. I could tell from the beginning. Because no, you didn't. Nobody knows what's going on in their head. Nobody knows. You know, I have friends that have raised some of the fiercest tomboys on the planet, but they are not transgender. You know, and then I have other friends that have raised the most, you know, what would seem like the most self-effacing female princess that is transgender. So you didn't know, you know? And then one of the things that I've seen happen big time is that I've seen religion used to shame them. Religion is weaponized to shame the trans community. And it's, you know, see homeless figures pretty much. You know, these are people and parents that believe that they're fighting for their salvation. And therefore, if they allow this trans child to be trans, they are in fact breaking some huge moral code. You know, and there's an entire organization that's called Beloved Arise, and it's a lovely organization. It's an organization for Christian queer folks. And it really dives into Bible and demonstrates that so much of all of the queer coding that goes into the Bible was put in there so many years later, and all the words were changed, and they have map backs to scripture. And I'm not here to change anybody's mind, but I'm trying to say that, you know, even if it does go against everything, that's your kid, you know, that you got, you know, so just if, you know, if there's any way. And then don't even begin to think that you know what they're going through. like just take it off the table. It's not like, oh, you know, I had a relationship with a girl. Like, well, I mean, it's none of that. Like, don't even attempt to try to equate any experience you've ever had with it. Just listen and listen and love. That's my favorite. Listen and love. So, you know, I think trans people are 6 times more likely to be autistic. This is something that has just come out, and my child is definitely, you know, Callum was diagnosed as autistic, but this is not something that we had done prior to Callum coming out. What Callum coming out did was it really allowed us to look at everything, you know, because a big part of that is mental health. You have to see mental health professionals, and we started seeing symptoms and signs of other things that now makes so much sense, right? So again, there was a landmark study that was created, and so basically, you know, the trans and gender diverse people and communities have higher rates of autism. So it's broken down into sort of 5 key sectors that they're 3.0 to 6% more likely to be autistic than cis people. They were much more likely to demonstrate the actual traits, sensory sensitivity, empathy, the quotient altogether. If you look, the purple arrows point to where the autistic transgender, if you see the gender diverse up here, and then you look at cis female and cis male, very specifically in the F to M, which is female to male, right? So F to M transgender, it's transgender use very much. This is very specific and something that happens. So the other thing is that they're more likely to have some psychiatric conditions, including OCD, ADHD, learning difficulties, depression, and bipolar disorders. So these are things that, again, they just go along with what it is. And so, you know, we definitely want to ask ourselves, like, what? Like, why? Why is that? And so there's a couple of different things that people can somewhat put their finger on, but again, there's no clear answer, right? So because autistic people conform less to the social norms, compared to non-autistic. They say that that might sort of explain why a greater number of autistic individuals identify outside of this, stereotypical binary. There's a lot of like prenatal mechanisms, hormones, and different things that are much more scientific but aren't really locked and loaded as facts. There's a lot of stuff going on right now with the XY chromosomes, and when they do or don't enter, enter and show up in, in the child during gestation. So, the bottom line is that we just really don't know, but this is real. This is something that absolutely is real. So let's see. So next we're going to go and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the burden of proof. So one thing I've really realized as Callum and I have continued to go down this journey is that poor Callum is like, nobody believes me. I feel like I'm always proving myself. I'm trying to prove, so these are some things that I've heard him say. It's not just a phase. Literally Corey said almost the exact same thing. Just because I'm not binary does not mean I'm not valid, right? You don't have to understand me to respect and support what I'm going through. This body doesn't belong to me. Literally, he's not trying to fit in. And after you've gone through the journey with your son who is trans and watch what they have to go through and put up with every day, it is unfathomable to me to think that somebody would go through all of that to fit in. It is directly the opposite of fitting. And it is, it is not. No. Callum is like, I don't want kids. I don't want them ever. I want to get all of my parts taken out. And it's horrible because nobody will let you do that. Again, they think it's a phase. They think that they're too young to determine what it is that they want to do. They're not old enough to do that. Well, all I know is that if Callum ever was pregnant, he would literally lose his mind. He thinks he's a man, and he is a man. He doesn't think it. He's a man. So it's very interesting, to see. And then I need medical interventions to be mentally and physically well. It was hard. He came out to me, and then like 2 days later, he's like, okay, well, I want you to sign up. Let's go find out about top surgery. I'm like, ah! Like, I just found out, like, we need to slow down. I need to, and Callum's like, no, we don't. I've known this for years. Like, this is who I am. And again, if we talk about regrets, that's another one that I had. Again, that's where that proving came in, right? Big decision. You're only 14. Suppose you change your mind. No. So again, all I'm trying to do is sort of allow people to understand what it is that I've been through. And that's my only degree, is being a mom. So things not to ask, a lot of people don't understand this, but don't say, have you had surgery? It's nobody's business. If you've had whatever's going on in here, it's nobody's business. You don't ask other people about that. You don't ask people if they have all their parts or if they don't. So it's completely inappropriate. Again, we talked a little bit about the dead name, but don't ask, what was your name before you came out trans? Or can I see a picture of you before you came out trans? Completely disrespectful and does not honor who they are. Are you gay? Gay and sex are two completely different topics altogether. They are not at all the same thing. If Callum liked men before he became a man, then, and he knew he was a man, then yes, that would make him gay. But it's not even a road, like, don't even go down. Like, there's no win in that game, and it's not respectful at all. And you wouldn't walk up to somebody else and be, hey, are you gay? Unless you're at an event where that's entirely appropriate. But you just want to respect people's privacy. How long have you known? Who cares? It's not important. A lot of people think that to be truly trans, and this was an assumption that I was under at the very beginning too, was that, trans people from the get-go knew. They were the kids that you just knew it. That's not true. People can realize that they're trans when they're 30. They can realize it when they're 60. They can realize it when they're 5. They can realize it when they're 13. None of this is about how long that they've known. And then this is the one, again, which is just, aren't you too young to make this big of a decision? It was just like, I can't even tell you the friends of mine, they're like, you're going to let him get top surgery? You're going to, like, suppose he regrets it. I'm like, if for some reason, which I don't believe will happen, if he ever decides that this is not who he is, he has made the best decision he possibly could, and he is so much, I can't even tell you the difference between the kid I have now and the kid I had before. And you know what? He can fix it. He can do whatever. This is a decision he made, and he will live with the repercussions. We live in a day and age of like helicopter parents, which I'm not, where we're so terrified of our kids to have to live with their mistakes. This isn't a mistake. Anybody who's known Callum for 5 minutes prior to and after he came out and was reassigned, I mean, it's just, you can tell, you can see. So then, this is, again, I talked about my goal, and truly, it is so important. One of the things that I have just come to know, and this is a post that I put up on my LinkedIn when Pride started. I just said, I want to introduce you to Callum. Again, he is the first openly self-identified queer member of our family's legacy. He's a beautiful and brave soul with a moral compass that is steadfast and fierce, a heart that is giving and generous, loyal, and too often taken for granted. But here's the deal, their loss. He is a relentless advocate of all who are oppressed. He is all in on who he truly is. He is forgiving of those who make mistakes, specifically me. If you have earned his love, he will sprint into the fire for you. He speaks up when others are too afraid. He respects and maintains boundaries. He intuitively senses someone who is uncomfortable and makes them feel seen. He is the greatest gift I have ever or will ever be given. So I posted this on LinkedIn very specifically and very intentionally, because I believe that there are so many parents out there that are going through this, and they just are afraid to talk about it. They don't, I say that, I call it, they're dying of terminal uniqueness. Like, you don't think anybody else is going through it. And I will tell you that when I posted this on LinkedIn, I had 6 people reach out to me and say, Denise, my daughter's 18 months. This is, and he tells me daily that he's a boy. I'm like, then he is. A business partner that I worked with at the CDC for years, he's like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful post. I want to do one now for my son, Osgood. And he posted one. And he labeled me on it. He posted me on it, and it's gotten like 4,000 likes. So the deal is this: I believe that as parents, we need to create a safe place and just move forward like any other parent would, with the pride of their children. We absolutely need to make sure that people see our kids for who they are. And we absolutely need to social norm that this is just a part of, just like you have a boy or a girl, you have a trans boy or a trans girl. It's a part of how everyday life is. And if we don't start dialing the spotlight up on these kids, so much of what they uniquely have to offer and what they have to contribute to our world, which is an insight that most of us will never have, right? It's priceless. And also, it's at the core of innovation. I mean, these people see, think, and experience the world differently. And so for them to bring their unique experience to businesses, to organizations, to brands, to products, to innovation, I mean, there's no stopping what they'll do. And so my goal, and again, is just to shine a beautiful light on all these beautiful trans kids and let parents know it's okay. And if people, and my philosophy is, if somebody doesn't want to do business with me because I have a trans child, then amen, but bye. I don't care. Don't let the door hit you, right? So, and it was tough because I looked at this post and literally like tens of thousands of people looked at this post. And I think only like 400 people liked it. So how many people looked at that? And that was a snapshot into my world where they're like, I don't know. That's kind of okay. We'll just pretend like we never saw that. I wish I could backtrack it and know exactly who they are. So again, you can tell I love my kid. I love that we live in a world now where, this is when I was in high school and college, I mean, this was just never a topic. Right now, especially in high schools, right now, gender, sexuality, these are things that don't hold the space that they used to hold when we were kids. It's not like my kid has friends over and it's like they don't, oh, he's bisexual. Oh, I don't even know, who cares? You know, like this is the world. So we've got this amazing generation of kids where it's like they're almost blind to this gender. You know, my child is an actor and he's like, Mom, I just want to be cast for who I am. I want to be cast as a non-gendered human, you know, and just allow that to happen. Like that's his big goal in life, is to get into Juilliard and become an actor and just really like blow the roof off of this whole gender thing. So my very favorite title in the world, I've owned companies, I've been CEOs, but my very, very, very favorite title is Callum's mom. And that's who you got to meet today. Rachel will probably say I'm a little different when it comes to business, but not much. I am who I am, sort of. I always say I'm too old and too tired not to be who I am. That is my email address. That is my phone number. Again, I don't know if it was the topic, but again, this is kind of a bummer. Like here we are and there's 5 people on the call. Like there is a stigma surrounding this that we absolutely have to break. You know, and I think that it's an uncomfortable subject because people don't understand it. And I think that understanding is power. You know, there's the company that I used to own called PRR. We created the behavior change continuum, where it's like the first thing is awareness that it exists. The second thing is understanding. So understanding how it pertains to you or how it pertains to the world in which you live in. Right. And so I think that we're stuck. We haven't gotten past those two. You know, I don't know what your normal attendance is on calls like this, but I just feel like we still sort of have a long way to go. But I'm so grateful for those who came. And, it makes me think more and more about trying to put a TED Talk together about it or something, because, my biggest struggle has been, it's not about me, but if I don't get out there and tell the story, then how is it ever going to see the light of day? So please feel free to reach out. I'd love to answer questions. This was something that actually Callum was going to join us on as well. But again, it's really funny. He's an actor. He's all those things. But it's one of the biggest things that people need to understand, and this has to do with all inequities, with racial, with sexual, all of those things. It's not the person who's being oppressed job to educate us on how to help them or why they're oppressed. And it's very counterintuitive, but it's true. Like, we're having we have an AEI, or, we have programs, we have something, let's make sure that this guy comes because he's African-American. Well, it's not his job. So Callum at the end, and it got to be big. And he asked me to pitch hit. So that's why it's me. So I hope you found something valuable in what it is that I'm talking about. And I'm constantly learning. And I just want to be the best human and mom I could ever be. So please, I'm always open to input.
Thank you so much, Denise. And we also want to recognize Callum giving you this platform and giving you permission to speak on his behalf and to talk a little bit about his story and your story as Callum's mom. I do have a question in the chat that I think might be better posed to Corey, but I want to throw it out there anyway and see where it lands. So the question is about, how have you witnessed pronouns being used in other cultures and languages? A lot of us are French and Spanish speakers here, so we're using gender related pronouns all the time for people and for nouns, but how have you witnessed pronouns in other cultures and languages?
Corey, do you have anything on that?
Okay, yes. It's an interesting topic. I am white, so I was born and raised in here. So English is my first language. I was definitely Americanized in my like being raised. But a lot of the members of Colectiva Queer, the nonprofit that I'm a part of, they are bilingual. They are from different cultures. A lot of them, there's a lot of binary in other languages like Spanish, Portuguese, French. But what I will say that there is a counter resistance and like almost like just like the kind of discourse that takes place in America and English speaking countries. There are a lot of queer people across the world that are, in the same sense that we have used terms like they, them, and kind of reclaimed as our own as a way to fight against binary language. There are tons of queer people who are trying to find their own way of finding gender neutral language. There's Latin versus Latino or Latinx. And things like that, where I don't have the comfortability speaking on their experiences, but there's a lot of people that are trying to expand past it. But it's never ending, right? We're always evolving, always educating ourselves. So
do you see any of the Spanish speakers switch from ella to él or anything like that in the circles that you've been in?
Oh yeah. Our owner, Monica Torre-Lisandro, she is Puerto Rican, and Spanish was her first language, but in her experience with working with the queer community and working specifically with the queer community in Puerto Rico, has adjusted a lot of her language to be more gender neutral and considers herself Latinx. So, it's happening. Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
That's great. Anybody else have any questions for Denise or for Corey?
Thanks for letting us recruit you, Corey.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. Oh, this was absolutely beautiful. Just to piggyback on what you said about this generation and watching them be so open about who they are and who they love, or their relationships to other people in the world. I'm a performing arts teacher myself, and
that's so great.
There's I really like the term, instead of like gender blind, it's more like they have truly been able to expand. They see all genders, right? To expand past it, see those genders as something personal and something individualized. I think that's such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And it's when we give the next generation the chance to be themselves and speak for themselves, it's amazing what interventions and possibilities become available to us. So
that's so true. And I was born and raised in South Louisiana. I'm very Cajun, and it's just, again, here's my 17-year-old soon to be, the first openly queer person. And again, that's openly. And I think that that's one of the other things that is a really big misunderstanding, is that, people are like, well, it's kind of a fad. Like a bunch of people, now all of a sudden, all these girls are coming out. And I think it's just like, I think it's kind of a fad. And I'm like, no.
We've always existed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like these people used to kill themselves, or they would be closeted or masking, or, so part of why this is so pronounced now is that there has become this safe space and acceptance of people stating it out loud, and saying it. And I just laugh because every night, like literally every night before my kid has gone to bed, before Kellen went to bed, even when he was a baby, I would say, I love you very much. There's nothing you could ever do that would make me stop loving you. Always listen to your gut. It's God's way of telling you what's right or what's wrong. You can do anything you put your mind to, and you are the perfect you. And so it's funny because in the 8th grade, I love it. Callum is like up there, getting his 8th grade diploma, and he's got this amazing like black polka dot dressed on with like high top chucks and a big blonde streak in his hair and this goth like necklace. And he's just like, I want to thank my mom for telling me that I am, I am who I am and I'm good for who I am, and, that I'm the perfect me, to be myself. And so then it's so funny because then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm trans. And it's like, good for you. You got, like it's rubber meets the road. It's like, if that's who you are, you're perfect. And I think that's the thing. It's just the one big thing that if I have to leave it on anything is that all your kids want is to be loved, accepted by their parents. It's a primal thing. And they want to be believed and they want to be valued and they want you to be proud. And I could not be more proud of my kid. And just even that one little thing, if you can find that with your kid, no matter what gender or anything they are, I think that there's so much power in that.
And culturally speaking, in the United States, when we're talking about the spectrum of being individualistic versus being collectivist, we tend to be all the way over to the individualist. And you can choose your own profession. In other cultures, that's not something that you get to choose. It's we decide as a group what we need in our group and what you're going to become. So we're really big into choose your own destiny, but it seems like but there's certain parameters around that for certain parents where you can choose your own profession, you can choose what you wear, but don't wear too much of that, right?
Well, and that's where that it's not about
you, but don't be too much of you.
Yeah, there's a lot of, again, grown up with a lot of the Southern hospitality, the Southern, way, anyways. So,
well, and the whole thing about, I brush at the word traditional, because traditional can mean a lot of things in certain circles and for certain groups. Traditional means very oppressive.
Yeah.
So I always, when people say, oh, well, they're a very traditional family, I'm like, what does that mean? It makes me feel a certain way. And Patricia, I think you had something that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. What's up, Patricia?
Intercultural matters.
I think Yuko had something too.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Yuko.
No, my question was more about like what could be the best first question to ask to someone if I don't know if it's he or she or they. What would be the best question to ask as a first question?
I think it's more of like, it's lovely to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
What is your name? And then sometimes your name would, and then call, again, if there's no opportunity to understand the he or they, then call them by their name. So that you can't mistake them for a he or she. So, Corey, Corey, do you have, just try to use their name. And, here's the thing about pronouns is they aren't important unless they're really important. So for many people, it's kind of like, I don't care. You can call me she, he, just don't call me late for dinner. But for somebody who's trans and that is so much of their identity and they've been wrongly identified, it is so important. So to me, I try to use names. And then if I'm still confused, I will say, my personal pronouns are she, they. Are you comfortable sharing yours? Great. Okay. Yeah, lovely. I just want to respect that, I don't know, Corey, is there anything you would add to that?
I think you said it very eloquently. I think that it's such an individual choice too, depending on how you interact with the world, and always thinking empathy first is the most important step, making sure you're aware and you come at it with compassion and kindness. Trans people are very used to assessing whether or not someone is friendly or not friendly. So I always say, don't be afraid, because if you can do anything to be a good ally to people, is do not be afraid. If you make mistakes, if you come at it with empathy and kindness and with the earnesty to learn more about the person, and not just making sure you don't mess up or you don't say the wrong thing. That's going to take you so far. You know, I have so many loved ones in my life that are so kind but terrified of doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing. And honestly, put yourself out there, put your pronouns out there, give them the chance to speak. And past that, the best questions are always going to be about them specifically, not about who they present as.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things which kind of struck this really strong reminder for me, Corey, is that like when I misgender my son, there is no excuse. There is no, oh, I'm sorry, we're in the doctor's office and have no, it's, I am so sorry. I apologize. I'm going to continue to try to fix this. The end. Like there's no excuses. These poor kids have heard so many excuses their whole life. You just need to own it. Like, you know, I wish I had it with me, but he's got this great thing about like, here's what an apology looks like. There's no but, there's just like, I am truly sorry. I hope I didn't, I'm very sorry if I hurt your feelings. I'm going to continue to try to do better. I'm sorry.
Thank you for that. And it sounds like Patricia, we're ready for your question now.
Yeah, actually, no, it was a statement. Thank you. Everybody asked all the questions, and I got some good stuff here. What I wanted to add, and I can't show you my face because I'm in transit. My son is driving, but it's actually great that you see my background, which is the I, and which means I see you. Something that I use a lot in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I do more global diversity, which includes US, obviously, and the rest of the world. And I think, Denise, you're onto something great. As you know, the United States has always been a country that's looked up to, even when we mess up, we still been looked up to. And I think that Callum and a lot of wonderful young, you know, I would say young children, young adults like this are really going to lead the way for those who don't have a voice, can't have a voice because of culture, because of the roles that are predisposed to you're a man, you're a woman, and you are more or you are less. And here we are, as Rachel said it, we are in a country of individualism, freedom of expression. So we are lucky. We are lucky, even if it's hard, and I know it's hard. You know, when you give when you give your child, you know, money for messing up, you are learning and you're communicating what's right and what's wrong. But a lot of parents don't have that opportunity, and I would love to see you, you know, stay in our circle more. We need to hear that. As a matter of fact, at CTAR USA on the board of directors, we have a transgender, Rob Push, and for me, he's Rob. He is Rob. At no point did I even ask ever, can I see a picture when you were a girl? Now, when you said that, I was like, oh, wait a second. I never asked Rob this. Rob is Rob, you know?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so important to call out, you know, those people that we know and go, oh, wait a second, that's who it is. And I never thought of it this way. And we know that in centuries and centuries of probably, you know, thousands of years, you know, there've been transgenders, and now it's okay. Now it's okay, but it's still not okay. I hear you, Denise, but believe me, now more than ever, it's okay. And I know that I opened my heart to all transgender, beautiful, you know, flowers out there, and more people like us. So I apologize for more of us not being here, but believe me, you have a big, big support system globally.
Yeah, and again, if there's something, this is only the second time I've ever even publicly spoke on it. You know, Amy Lee, who runs our HR at Launch, and we're all part of, you know, our DEI sort of group, and said, would you consider, because I had put the post up about Callum, and, you know, Amy's just a lovely woman, and she's like, hey, would you, you know, consider just saying something at the Monday huddle? So I did a much less, you know, this is way further, but I just kind of, again, got up on like a mom, and I told Amy, I said, it's really weird. Like, it was emotional. Like, there were times where I wanted to cry, and it's so not who I am in business. I mean, like, not at all. But again, I just sort of took my hat off, and there were so many more ands and ums, and, you know, but I'm a professional speaker, so that usually doesn't happen. It was just kind of funny to see how, oh, I didn't even know Amy was on there. Hi, Amy. So yeah, so this is only the second time I've ever talked about this, but it is my life's mission. I want to shine a light on Callum and the people like him. I want companies to understand how valuable these people are and the different insight that they have. And so I am, I'm looking at this. So any feedback you have on this conversation, anywhere else that you think that it would be valuable for me to talk about this, or maybe I can even get Callum a little more organized after he gets through. Right now, he's just so into his college auditions. He's kind of stressed out. But so, whatever I can do, please. I still welcome any input. I believe that input and feedback is a gift. And anything you guys have to say, I would love to hear it.
Well, thank you so much, Denise, for joining us this evening. And you did a fabulous job just sharing from your heart. And I think we all took a lot away from it. So I want to echo what Yuko said in the chat about you are an amazing mother and you're very inspiring. So we want to thank you for joining us on the opposite coast of where we are. We are coast to coast tonight. So we're actually in Florida, but as I mentioned, we are a subset of CTAR USA, which stands for the Society of Intercultural Education, Training, and Research. We have a few board members on with us this evening, and that has been our program. And we're going to end our CTAR Florida year, the last day of Pride Month, with this program. We're going to adjourn for the summer, and we'll be back probably September or October with some new programs. In the meantime, look us up. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel. This is going to be posted on all of those platforms once we have the recording edited and produced. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and special thanks goes to Denise Walls.
Thank you so much, you guys, for giving me such a valuable hour of your time. You already have a place in my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, and good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Denise.
Denise. Amazing
Thank you,
presentation.
Corey.